Hello everybody and welcome to episode 3 of the Ultimate Starters Guide. I could edit that out, but I probably won't. And episode 3 we are going to be looking at Italy. Now the choice of starting is always a tricky one in War Thunder, and it's a choice that everybody has to make, of course. So in this episode we're going to be looking at the starting section for Italy. Now last episode was France, so if you haven't seen that, please go to my channel and look it up. It's down there, easy to find. It will be in a playlist as well with everything in there. There's actually a first bit about starting in War Thunder altogether as well, so a pure tutorial, with the second one being the starting guide for France. Now, Italy is one of our newest nations in the War Thunder tech tree for ground forces. Now, Italy has some interesting tanks, but it has got quite a big gap in certain sections, and this can make it quite tricky as you go further down the line. So before I go into talking about some of the starting tanks, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the tech tree in general. So with the Italian tech tree, if we go to army, not aviation, as you can see, there is a bit of a gap once you get to the sort of P40 mark. Once you get to the P40 or M4 Tribio, the 4.7 mark, there's a huge gap until you get to the 6.7 mark or 6.0, 6.3 mark. And this is because obviously with the armistice happening and things like that, the tanks weren't being produced anymore. Now there were some tanks that were produced, and there were some tanks that were mocked up, and there were some tanks that were modelled and in design and in process being made. There were also tanks that were being used by the Italians from Germany, for instance, things like the Panther and things like that. So things like that are something that could come into the future. Now this of course is in 1.87, so it can change. This is just a starting guide for that section. So of course, if you're watching this in the very far future, Italy might have a full tech tree with lots of different vehicles in it, in which case I'll hopefully have made a new video about it. So anyway, let's get started. Now, your reserve tank for Italy is the M1340. Now, the M1340 originally was a replacement tank for the L3 tankettes and the M1139, which is actually in game. So the tankettes are these vehicles here. They were basically small little tiny tanks which carried 2 people, and this is what a tankette is. And it's not really a tank, it's not really a tractor. They call them tankettes, and a few nations had them. France actually has some as well. With this one, of course, you actually do get a 20mm anti-tank rifle on it, which is different to an anti-tank cannon because it's a small gun, it's rifled, and it's designed as a long-barreled, high-velocity shell delivery system. So if we just look quickly at the shell, you can see it has a very fast meters per second just down in the corner there, just where it says MS. So it's a very fast, high-velocity shell, so it's designed to go very fast so it will go through armour. But it's not a very big shell. It's a sort of system that was developed in the First World War when tanks only had, like 5 to 10 millimeters of armour. So it wasn't as effective later on. Now the M1139, if we look at it, now this is the tank that the reserve tanks is replaced. The M1139 is of this sort of era where the tanks had the actual tank destroying gun, or the howitzer or the large gun in the hull, and then on top it had machine guns. So on top you have 2 8mm Brada M38 machine guns. In the hull, however, you have a 37mm Vickers gun, and this was the anti-tank gun, and effectively this was the sort of tank of the interwar period, and you'll see it with a lot of vehicles that they sort of have this weird design. The M3 Lee is a good example, where it has its large gun in its fixed position, and then on top it has a lighter, smaller gun. So this vehicle was to be replaced by the M1340, and basically the bottom section was kept the same, but the top section was changed. So if we jump now to the M1340, we'll jump to the Model 1. Let's just jump to the customization, there we go. So as you can see, it still looks very similar. There was a slightly newer engine put in, a new Fiat engine put in there, new diesel actually, Fiat engine, with a little bit more power. the body was changed a little bit. Where the 37mm gun went, they actually put the machine guns. Then they made a turret which had the ability to fit 2 people into it. So if we look in X-ray, we can see it's a 2-man turret. A full rotating turret as well, and it is hand cranked rotated, so it's quite slow in its movement. Now, the main reason for this larger turret was actually so they could fit the new 47mm 47/M32 Model 35 cannon in there. Long names for the Italian guns, but this was an excellent anti-tank cannon. So if we look here, we can see this anti-tank cannon in its sort of looks, and a fantastic cannon, very good velocity, very good gun on it, very good ammunition and rounds on it. And this cannon was something that was very, very handy for the Italians. You also had quite a lot of machine guns on board as well. There were actually 4 Breda machine guns on these models. Now, the Model 1 shouldn't have this on here. This was a later addition, or it was a field modification for the anti-aircraft machine gun to be placed on top. So really, we shouldn't have that on there. But we also shouldn't have a radio in here. But there's also a radio in here, just sitting here. The Model 1 actually didn't have a radio, and it didn't have the extra machine gun. The vehicle was put together in a multitude of different ways. There was actually parts of it that were cranked with a nut and a bolt system and partially welded, and then there were other parts which were actually riveted. The majority of it was a riveted vehicle. You will notice though in later Italian models they actually use a nut and bolt system so they can replace the armour quicker. The turret armour, I believe, is a nut and bolt system on this tank, and then parts of the body are more of a standard riveted system. So what they actually did is the Italians were quite good at this. They had this design of these nuts and bolts, which basically they just undo, take the bit of armour out that was destroyed, put a new bit of armour on, and screw it back on, basically. It was a very cool system, and the Italians sort of were very fond of using that, although in all honesty it wasn't a very good system, because you've got nuts and bolts on a tank, and the problem with that is when you're actually hit and something explodes, then the nuts and bolts and rivets come into projectiles and they go shooting all over the place and cause lots of harm to people standing around them. Anyway, let's not talk too much on the history. We'll talk about the tank itself. So this tank is actually a relatively good vehicle. It's got some good armour on it. Now, you've got 30mm of hull plating all around, 25mm on the side, and then the rear armour, of course, is a bit thinner as well, although you do have a 25mm back section. So it is relatively tough for some of the vehicles to penetrate. The turret is a very good turret. Now, the actual front of the turret is 40mm, and this is the weakest point in the mantlet section. Just to the side, though, you have a 45mm, and as you can see, the effective thickness does go up a bit to 46. And then on the side of the turret, you have this 25mm armour, but it's sloped heavily. So basically, it's almost impenetrable from most vehicles. Now, with the Italian tech tree line, you actually get 3 of these tanks. You actually get the Model 1, 2 and 3. Now, the Model 2 is actually a premium version, so if you do the tutorial with the Italian tanks, you'll end up with the M1340 Model 2, and then if you unlock it, you've got it unlocked, it's sitting there, it's the Model M1340 Model 3 series. Now, there's no real difference between these models. As I said, it was mainly things like the anti-aircraft gun turret position and the radio that were the significant changes of these tanks. So you don't really see them in game much, but it is a really good reserve lineup, because in all honesty, this is one of the best reserve tanks in game. Now, it's not the fastest, it's not got the best gun, but it's a decent vehicle. It's got very good armour, it's got a very good gun, it's not bad on speed, it's not great, but it's not bad. But the thing is, this thing can shoot from a good long distance away. So what we'll just do quickly is we'll just jump into the test drive. We'll take out the Model 1, so we'll just jump into the test drive now. And so here we are in the test drive. So as you can see, the tank here, it's a relatively small silhouette as well, which does help. One of the good things as well is the crew are relatively well spaced out, so if you do get penetrated, usually only 1 or 2 crew members will go down, so you do have that option. Now, the tank's speed is nothing to write home about. It's not very good. The rotation speed of the turret as well is quite slow. One of the other things as well I have actually forgotten to mention is with tanks and all vehicles, they actually go faster on a road than they do on cross country. which of course is obvious when you say it, but in game the effect is basically, as you can see, we're getting about 11 miles per hour, getting up to 12 now. But if we get on the road, we'll actually get a much better speed. So if you're playing in game and you can see a road to your location, always use that because it will get you there much quicker, which is always handy. So we should get up to around about 13 to 14 miles per hour, hopefully. Will we? Unfortunately, I don't think I've got all the engine upgrades in this yet. So we're just hitting our top speed of 11 miles per hour, which, as I said, is relatively slow, but it's not too slow. Oh, 12, there we go. 12 miles per hour. We're getting there. Gosh, speeds are blistering. So what I wanted to show you was just the front. So we've got this Tesseract here. So one of the great things about this gun is you've got the shell in there. You've got the armor-piercing high explosive shell, and this shell has 30 grams of explosive mass in it. You also have a good range of penetration, up to 40 millimeters from 500 meters away. So if we look, you can see that the actual aiming reticle is rather small. So you can see we can pretty much hit the tank as long as we've got the sort of crosshair aiming at it. If we shoot, say, just below right here, you'll notice that we just hit the dirt just below the tank. So you don't have to make huge adjustments for this gun to be shot at long distances. We'll use the Matilda as an example if we just drive forward a bit so the tree's not in the way. So there's the Matilda over there, and that's at probably about 600-700 meters away. It's not too close, it's relatively far away, it's not 200. But as you can see, it's very easy to aim at it. Even the Churchill over there, we can just lift our gun up a little bit and we're going to hit sort of the actual tank relatively easily. There's not much difference for ranging of this gun. It's very easy to aim with, and even at long distances you can probably get a shot off with your eyeball and manage to get a hit on a tank at sort of 10, sort of a kilometre away. And even actually defeat the tank. Okay, there we go. We've actually managed to defeat the Centurion Mark III over there with our amazing gun, because we've set it on fire. That was a absolutely fluke shot and in no way skill. But we'll just turn and get a shot on this Tesseract and just show you what I mean by the explosive damage. So if we shoot centre of mass here, the whole crew's knocked out because we have that explosive fella in the shell. The HE just explodes, the whole tank is destroyed, and it absolutely annihilates the target. So this tank is very, very strong with its gun, and it's got some good strength at distance. We'll just return back to the hangar now. Now the other good thing about this tank is the 4 8mm machine guns you've got on board. Now they're not hugely got a huge amount of penetration value. If we look at the rounds, the armor piercing round has around about 9mm penetration at 100mm, you know, so it's not greatly penetrative. However, if there's a vehicle with open crew, for instance, where you can see people in the crew, you can take them out relatively easily with this. It's also good for taking down aircraft, although you do have a very limited amount of shots in your gun. If we just go to the X-ray view and hover over this Breda, you can see it's got 1,524 in its ammunition. However, it only has a magazine of, I think it's 30 shots, if memory serves me correctly, or maybe 31, something silly like that. So, you know, you only get a few shots out before you have to change the magazines in them, and that becomes a bit frustrating, of course. So you can't make long firing machine gun shots, you have to make them timed and sort of use them to your advantage. One of the other things this tank gets, however, is a modification shell. It gets the Granata Perforente Model 39, which is an armor-piercing ballistic cap shell. So what this is it's basically like the APHE, however it has a ballistic cap on it, which is a sort of really sort of coned cap on it, and then it's made to make it go faster, and also when it hits the tank, the sort of ballistic cap will crumble a little bit, and then underneath it is a secondary cap which basically penetrates the tank a little bit easier, so it gives it a bit more penetration value, and you can see that with its distance. So in the penetration distances, you can see over a longer distance, if you actually look between these two shells here, over the 500 meter distance, the shell has 5mm more penetration. That's not much, but it is enough to help, and it can really make a difference. The shell velocity is the same, so they're not going to make any difference with the aiming, but the shell has the same amount of TNT explosives in it, so it's still a very, very strong shell. Also, the fuse delay is the same of 1.2 millimeters, so it has got some good penetration at longer distances. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the tactics of using the M1340 quickly. Now using this tank is, you can use this to your advantage. Now one of the things I'd recommend with this tank is if you are angling a little bit, angle with your machine guns this way. Now if we look at the armour and go to the protection analysis, we'll just go to somewhere like France, for instance, with the R39. Now the MLE 1938 is not a great shell, but it has got 48mm of penetration. So if we look front on, we can get penetrated. However, once we start angling to the side, this shell starts having trouble penetrating us at all, especially through the front. Our turret as well is completely safe. There is like maybe a couple of very small points where it might get penetrated, sort of around the neck. There's this little triangle here, but there aren't many positions where penetration will happen. The main use of this tank is to keep it at range as well. You want to basically keep this tank ranged sort of to the 500 meter mark. You don't want to be the tank leading the advance, you want to be the tank behind supporting your advance. So basically giving supporting fire, cover fire, things like that, because you're not fast enough to lead the charge. So your job is basically to work as the middleman. You want to work sort of in the middle. You don't want to work too far back sniping, you just want to be in the middle, sort of taking a couple of shots, but also dealing out quite a lot of damage. And you can make that really work to your advantage with this tank if you angle it correctly or get hull down. Because again, hull down, this tank is nigh impenetrable through its turret with most nations' shells. Now the nations you need to look out for are actually Britain, because the British with their armour piercing shell have got very, very, very good penetration abilities. Pretty much going to go through your tank anywhere. America, their shots as well have very good penetration abilities, so again America is one of the troublesome ones. And Russia as well. Russia have a shell that has some good penetration values too, and it will cause you trouble. However, if you're facing France, you will be able to stop some of the shells. Also Japan, they're not likely to penetrate you, however Japan's likely to be on your side. Now, next up is really where to go after you've unlocked this tank. Now, my recommendations for the Italian tech tree is simple. You want to go for the AB41 as your next vehicle. Now, the AB41 is an armoured car, and this thing is great fun. It's an armoured car with a 20mm cannon on board. The cannon itself has got a high velocity round, which is very, very good. The Panzergranat 40, if you look here, has got a high velocity armour piercing shell, and that thing has the armour penetration of 64mm at point blank, but it's 63mm at 100 metres. It does drop off quite quickly to 29mm at distance though. But this shell is very, very strong. Even its stock shell is quite strong, and you've got a good penetration ability with it of up to 40mm, 38mm sort of area. And again, it's quite a high firing, fast shooting gun. It can shoot up to 500 rounds per minute, of course, but it doesn't hold 500 rounds in its clip. So you can see the ammo clip there. I think it's only about 8 or 10 shots it has before you have to reload. But this thing has got speed on its side. It's a very fast manoeuvrable vehicle, and it's a very good vehicle to outflank your enemies. Now this tank is a very, I'm going to use the word tank rather than armoured car, because it's effectively doing the job of a light scout tank. This tank is very good at outflanking the enemy and getting into a space where normally people would not expect you, and you're able to shoot them through the side or through the back, and that's what you want to do. Now the reason I say this is a good vehicle to unlock first is because this is going to be how the Italian tech tree really runs for you. If you look at the Italian tech tree, there are a lot of light, fast vehicles that don't have much armour, that they have very good guns. Even things like the M4 Tipio, which is just a standard Sherman body with a 76mm gun, so it's basically a Firefly. Things like that are very good because they're very fast, easy to get places. Then you've got the Fiats with the anti-tank rifles on them. You've got the Centuros, which are just incredibly fast, incredibly fun, and very useful. The AUBL as well. These tanks are designed to go very fast into places where people don't expect them. Even their ATGM system, the Auto Malaria, is a quick vehicle. It's designed to get to places quite fast, set up, and then attack from there. You will find this with a lot of Italian vehicles. They have more speed than armour related. And when you do finally get down to the Ariete P, which is the pre-production model, it's got a lot of speed, but it does have sort of very limited armour sort of areas. If we actually go to protection analysis, we can see that it has an effective armour of up to 364mm on the front. And it has got some decent armour, but it's not up there with things like the Abrams or the Leopard A5s or Challenger 2s or the Type 90. But this tank has got some speed, it's got the bit of armour that you need, but that's the thing with the Italians, is you're mainly going to be doing a lot of running and gunning. You're not going to be sitting there and shooting off rounds, you're not going to be there tanking, so to say. So it's good to get the armoured car done first, the AB41, because it gives you a good idea of what the Italian tech tree is going to be like. You do unlock the L640 after that, which is another light tank. It's actually quite a fast, good little light tank, based off of a Tank-et chassis. I wouldn't recommend using it too much. I don't find it very good. The L3 is quite fun because it's a fun little machine. However, a lot of the Italian tank destroyers are a bit on the weak side. You do get some good things like the 7534s, for instance. These tanks are very, very good, especially the 7546 M43, which has a very good velocity gun on it. But the majority of them aren't that good. The P40 is a relatively good main battle tank. It's not bad, it's not good, it's an okay tank, it has its okay abilities. So what we'll do is we'll just go to a battle quickly with our reserve lineup. Okay, so here we are on Abandoned Factory. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our reserve tank out first, our very first tank. We're not going to take out that much ammunition because it just doesn't, it's not needed. Take out 50 rounds. So as you can see, we don't really have the speed advantage. This is pretty much completely stock actually. I haven't actually ground much in this vehicle. I did my grinding in the other ones. So we'll just head towards A, and as you can see there is a very fast armoured car heading down towards that way, which is one of ours. Now we're fighting every nation that can penetrate us other than France, so we've got to be very careful. So we're going to go to the left hand side of this building. We're just going to keep over on this side rather than sort of straying off into an area where the enemy can see us. So we use our binoculars quite a lot because, as you can see, the visibility is not great, but in our binocular view it's a bit better. Now I'm actually not going to go for A. I'm sort of just going to slightly side flank it. And the reason I'm doing this is just so I can, hopefully, if anyone does go for A, or if anyone is coming this way, we can catch them out. So somebody is capturing A, so we now know that. So there's going to be somebody around the corner here. And there is a tank right there. Unfortunately, it's a much faster tank than us, and we're going to just get completely owned by this guy if we don't get the shots off right. Luckily though, he did not play as smart as us, but he has artilleried our position. We also know that there was a tank on A, so there's going to be somebody to the right of us, so we're going to move away from the artillery. We don't have the turret rotation speed to really be able to fight in this sort of urban environment very well. Just listening out for anything, just keeping an eye out for things. And we're going to move into the cap circle now. So we're going to keep an eye in front of us, keeping sort of nice and calm. We've got some friendly allies pushing up, which is always good. The zone is captured. We're going to start moving forwards now. Definitely tank to the right of us that's just penetrated our turret. So we've got damage as well. Actually, we didn't get damaged. Luckily, we just lost a couple of crew members. But right now, we're just going to... slowly slide out. And just behind us is where we're getting shot from. I'm going to try and figure out what was shooting us. Still being shot from the vehicle behind us there. Just see him now. And taking out the commander. And he's going to start running away.
Attention to the designated grid square. Another zone captured. We have the advantage.
So we're going to back up. He's going into the same position as he was before. Just use this moment to repair. And we're going to call out to our team that there is a guy over here. He can see where we are. Aim our shot, take our time and take him out. Luckily that Panzer II came along and helped us out. Hopefully he's got a fire extinguisher. We'll try and put him in a bit of a safe position. Unfortunately, we are a little bit broken ourselves, so we'll just do the second best thing and stand guard, because there will probably be another tank coming along in a minute from their spawn. Now he's repaired, so that's all good. So we're just going to push forwards, and we just have to watch out for that allied tank, the British tank, to come along, just in case he has another spawn ready. So we sort of just played our time, played our moments there, and as you can see, we managed to take a couple of shots. We took some damage, but we sort of managed to stay alive, and that's one of the big advantages of this tank, because you do have those 4 crew members, so you can survive once you get hit by another tank, especially if it's an armor piercing shell, because it's just going to usually carry straight through your tank. So somebody's capturing A, so we're going to try and go down there. But the game is going to probably end before we find out who it was. So yeah, end of the game there. Didn't manage to get down there before we could capture them. So all in all, not a bad game there. We got some decent research points for our BR. Also running a premium account. We've got 2 tank rescuers and an Avenger, as well as the new decal as well. And also some bits for our tank too. So 3 kills, 6 hits. We did pretty well there, and we didn't actually die, which is one of the impressive things. I always like to have matches where I don't lose a vehicle. I'm going to research the second ammunition type. Generally what I'd recommend with the research is horizontal drives, and also the new shell basically. So in this position, the new shell obviously is the first thing I'd research. Adjusting firing, adjustment of horizontal drive, so we got turret goes faster basically. Adjustment of fire, so there's less weapon spread. Not that there really is much, but it will just help in that respect. And the elevation mechanism is already done. And we can research our tracks now as well, so we can get some extra points for our next research vehicle. And if of course we were researching a tier 1, we would of course get some good points towards that. And that match would have really helped us out there. So we'll finish up there. So the Italian tech tree is an interesting one. It's got its strengths and it's got its weaknesses, of course. Its biggest weakness is the armour. It lacks armour, but its biggest strength is speed and guns. If you play it right, the Italian tanks can be absolutely deadly. If you play them wrong, they can feel like they're underpowered and not really working. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Please give me a comment and a subscription as well if you would like to. Also, comment any questions you have for the Italian tech tree. For new players, if you're new to the game, leave me a comment. If you've got any questions, please ask away. Also, join our Discord server, the Screezilla Kaiju Club. More than welcome to have you there. Always looking forward to having new people, and you can always talk to me there, and I can try and help you out if you are struggling in the lower BRs, are struggling with something and not knowing how to make it work. You can always ask me a question there. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, this is me, Carl Screezilla. Out. Bye bye.